Hello everybody, welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news as new Manchester United manager / coach, really, Ruben Amorim demands INEOS clear out and get rid of the low intensity players. We'll also be talking about Marcus Rashford, ex-scout, ex-head scout of Manchester United, has expressed his concerns around Marcus Rashford. Seems to be a lot of people doing that this morning, which I find a little bit weird because we've been discussing Rashford for about 18 months and the problems around the inconsistencies there, and he's not the only player that has that. But we'll discuss that as well. Also want to talk about what high-intensity players Amorim might be looking to get in and what low-intensity players probably will be heading towards the exit door. You'll have a say on that. Also, an interesting little bit of message that came in, I can't remember whose name it was, said it to me, around Ruben van Nistelrooy and INEOS and why they left it to Ruben Amorim to make a very obvious decision. Why didn't they do it themselves? So we'll talk about that as well. But let's start off with where we're going to start off, which is the big story. And this is coming in from Fabrizio Romano, who has basically said this afternoon on his channel. From what I'm hearing, the first indication from Ruben Amorim to Manchester United is we need to bring players with intensity. These were the crucial words he mentioned in the opening talks and meetings he had with United. Well, I interpret that as get rid of the Deadwood and spend money. And happy days. I mean, this needs to happen. We need to get rid of the Deadwood and we need to give Amorim the right players to play this very unique system. You could argue that, look, Ten Hag plays a different system to Mourinho and Ollie, but there is a back four. Amorim's system is totally different to anything we've ever seen at Old Trafford. Sir Alex didn't do it. Moyes didn't do it. Nobody did it. So you've got to give him players for a very, very different system, of course. But on top of that, I think when you hear the words that he has said to INEOS, I need you to bring me players with intensity, that really says, I need players with intensity. And that really says, buy me players with intensity and deliver me players from this squad with intensity. And if they don't have it, they've got to go. And that is essentially what everybody wants, which is just to clear the Deadwood and build a team that can replicate what he's done at every other club he's been at. And I'm not going to say replicate Sporting because he did it at Braga as well. He has a clear vision of what he wants to do. And INEOS, I believe, will allow him to do it. And the question has to be, what players can go on a high-intensity journey with Amorim? And the very interesting thing about that is that, if we're being honest, it's not just the players you would like to get sold who can't go on that journey. Johnny Evans can't go on that journey. I love Johnny Evans, but he can't go on a high-intensity journey. He can't. So it's not just about the players you want to get rid of. It's also players that just can't go on that journey. Luke Shaw cannot go on that journey. At the moment, Mason Mount cannot go on that journey. Now, I'm not saying that some of these players can't change and go on the journey. Some of you are saying there ain't no way Rashford's going on a high-intensity journey. Well, you look at him training in the summer when he's running up that hill and he's got his top off and everything like that. That's very high intense. So you don't know what's going to happen, but there are a lot of players that you would guess would struggle based on the last 2 years. And there is no point in Ruben Amorim or any other coach coming into Manchester United and being told to put square pegs in round holes. And what I find really encouraging here is that when it's David Ornstein and Fabrizio Romano and Manchester United, we know it's pretty much coming from Manchester United. I mean, you can argue Ornstein's done better than Romano. You can argue the other way. I think over the summer, they both threw some very big hits and they were both very much informed in one way, shape or form from people close to the club. And it was pissing off a lot of journalists. So I think when Fabrizio Romano says that Amorim, in his very first meetings with United, was saying, I want players with intensity. Remember, they had to get him out of Sporting as well. They had to get Amorim out of Sporting. He wasn't sat there on his arse, going, oh, please give me a job. He was in a job with a team that was going to win another league title, that was doing very well in the Champions League, and Man United needed to get him out. And I think this benefits us as a fan base as much as it will benefit INEOS and Man United. Because if they've got to get him out of a job, they can't just say, guess what? We want to take you out of Sporting and there's no money to spend and you've got to use the crap players. Come on. He's going to go, you're having a fucking laugh. Man City are waiting for me in the summer. I can win the league at Sporting I can play in the Champions League and then I can go to Man City. If you want me at Man United, you've got to do this, this, and this. And I think that will be really, really interesting. A lot of people are chucking in names that they think will go and who will be staying. I'm happy to do that, of course. But look, first and foremost, we've got to see the proof in the pudding. We've been sold a lie so many times over the last 10 years. We don't know what the truth is. But with all due respect to INEOS, they have only been here for less than a year. It's hard to call them liars. It's hard to say that they make false promises. But they will be judged, as I said on Christmas Eve last year, they will be judged by their actions because there is nowhere to hide. The Glazers, etc., have failed because they've lied many, many times. They've tried to take us into a Super League. They've that Old Trafford rot. They've spent ridiculous money. They've taken dividends. They've paid stupid wages. INEOS will be judged on all these things, and quite rightly so. And the biggest thing they're going to be judged on is that we are fed up of sacking managers, whether they deserve to go or not, whether it was a bad judgment call to give them the job in the first place. We are fed up of sacking managers, and many of us believe that whilst managers have had to go, whether it's Jose, Ten Hag, or Ollie, there were other factors at play where the manager actually was the fall guy for other people as well. They were responsible, but they weren't solely responsible. So when we look at this Amorim journey, we're very much like, well, hold on. This is what he does at Sporting. This is the way he plays. This is his persona. Don't destroy this guy. I don't want to see Amorim walking in with black hair and wearing Prada and in a year's time be wearing glasses, have grey hair and be wearing Primark. I want him to walk out of Manchester United 2, 3 years, 4, 5 years looking the same as he does now with an aura and a personality. And for that to happen, you can't drain the life from the guy like we do with some players, like we have done with some managers. We've got to deliver for him and give him the platform. And to do that, you will have to remove the low intensity players and you will have to make big decisions and you will have to bring players in. And before we talk about the players that need to go or might be on the chopping board, I think it's also important to mention the players that he might bring in. Because I've seen a few people sort of getting involved in what Romano had said and said, you know, we need to go and get Musiala and we need to go and get this and we need to go and get that. I'm not bothered about recruitment and I don't need to name names. We've put a lot of work into our recruitments over the summer. I'm very happy with Agate. No one was talking about him until we went for him. I'm very happy with De Ligt. That wasn't on the cards in March. I'm very, very happy with Mazraoui. That wasn't on the cards in March. So we've already made some strides in the transfer window in relation to the sort of players that we've gone for. We've also got Favel, who's very good at recruiting younger players. We've got a very good youth setup with players coming through. So I'm not too worried about recruitment. And also, a fourth point, if you may, I'm not bothered about naming names that we're going to sign because if we're talking about talented, high-intensity players, there's players like that at Aston Villa. There's players like that at Brighton. There's players like that in the French League. There's players like that in the Bundesliga. There's plenty of these players out there and they're not going to cost £100 million each. High intensity, talented players with charisma, character and personality, there's plenty of them out there. It's about buying the right ones. So I'm not worried about recruiting high intensity players that are talented enough to play the Amorim system. Hopefully the money's there to do it, but I'm not worried about it. Recruitment, I'm fine with it. In fact, I've never been so confident about recruitment because of what we did in the summer, the people we've got coming through the youth, what we're doing around Favel, and also, most importantly, when you have a very distinctive formation and system, your recruitment should actually get better. Because if you've got a 4-3-3 that everybody else plays, you're all fishing in the same pond. But with Amorim's 3-4-3, it's so distinctive, it's almost closure on a lot of signings anyway. It makes you go after certain targets. And then if you go after those certain targets, not only is it Man United, I think there's something about playing a unique system for a manager with a good reputation. So I don't worry about recruitment. I think recruitment will be fine. I worry about removal. The removal of players is what worries me because that's what's held us back. We've spent over £1.5 billion since Sir Alex Ferguson left on signings. But removal of the Deadwood, whatever you want to call it, has been absolutely terrible. And that, for me, is the area I'm looking at because no manager, Mourinho said it, there's 3 players at United now that I wanted to get rid of in the first few months at Manchester United and they wouldn't do it for me. So we know that removal has not been good enough. And I look at that Amorim's statement coming out from Romano, or words to the effect of he wants high intensity players. Well, who's gonna fit that bill? And let's talk about that. Mark Hallett, welcome to the Members Club. Thank you very much for getting your badge in. Really appreciate that. In fact, I've got a shout out for some people who are members of the club, because there's this brilliant new feature on YouTube that I wanted to mention again. Who will be on wings? Do you think Garnacho can play in Ruben's system? Well, we'll talk about the players that have got the high intensity in a minute, Tarek, but yeah, good question. Patrick Lynch says, lack of tempo, lacklustre and ponderous. Those are phrases that are associated with United's play over the last 18 months. I'm excited to hear Amorim wants to play a high intensity, exciting brand of football. Hey, don't let that super chat from Patrick get lost on you, by the way. He's absolutely spot on. If I talk about Man United over the last, not even 18 months, longer, Patrick, it goes back to Ollie. It happened with Rangnick, and it happened with Mourinho. It happened with Van Gaal. There are players that aren't here anymore. There are teams that aren't here anymore that did exactly the same. We have had a very lackluster, inconsistent, ponderous, poor style of play United side for a decade. It's not just unique to the last 18 months. It's been going on for a very long time. So it is exciting to hear those words of intensity and consistency. But can it be delivered? Because it hasn't been delivered yet in 10 years. Sean says, finally, we can move on Ten Hag from Ten Hag in out, show some unity and get behind the team and the manager as one. We are united. Rashford out. Says he's only joking. Amorim said, can't play his style straight away, says Dan O'Connell. I haven't seen that, Dan, and it's a really tough one to answer with any conviction because I haven't seen that quote and I don't know the context of it. If you're saying to me we can't play like Sporting straight away, no shit, Sherlock. If you're saying to me he's not going to play a 3-4-3 straight away, I'm worried because I think he's just got to crack on. I know it might not work well, but I think he's got to crack on with the 3-4-3. Otherwise, what's the point in bringing him here? If he's going to come here and play a 4-3-3, he'll end up in the same position as Rangnick and Ten Hag, where you come in and go, I can't play the way I want to play, so I'm just going to get results in a different way. I think when you've got the patience of the fans, do what you do. I think he'll play a 3-4-3. Hi, Mark. What are the 3 qualities Amorim needs to be different from our prior managers? Love the channel, by the way, says Caitlin. Well, point 1. He needs to come in and play his system from day one and not worry about results. He's got to play his way. That's why he's here. Point 2, he's got to be backed in getting rid of the Deadwood, and he's got to have his eyes wide open to who that Deadwood is. And I think point 3, it's absolutely essential that he is about youth at Manchester United. There has to be a pathway to the first team for young players if they're good enough. Vic and Vern Sports Chat says, hi Mark, I love the show. You're the reason we started our channel. Never miss your show. Hope Amorim can make United great again. Well, good luck with your show as well. And thank you very much for your super chat. Rude should have gone to Sporting, says Ravenclaw. I don't know who Sporting are getting, actually. I've not heard anything about that. Finally, I've done that one from Sean. Sorry. Hi, Mark, says Dave. Do you think it's a good idea to avoid Sporting raid? We did it with Ten Hag, and that didn't go down very well, says Dave. I think you've made a great point, Dave, here. I mean, I want to talk about the players that might be going, who haven't got the intensity, because that's what we're talking about tonight. But Dave raises a good point. We don't need to worry about recruitment. There's loads of players out there. I mean, look at Brighton, look at Villa. There's so many clubs in the Premier League that have got high-intensity players. We don't need to go after Sporting players. But if we do go after Sporting players, I also think we should back it, because one of the things that the arrogant media did around Man United was ridicule as buying players from the Eredivisie because they were Ten Hag. Mourinho did this with Porto players. There's nothing wrong with bringing in players in that you trust, that can think you can work your system, especially when you've got a system like Amorim. But I don't think it's essential that we bring Sporting players in. I really don't. I still believe that people going on about Gyökeres could be really impressed with Rasmus within 8 months under Amorim. So I don't think we have to do it. But if we do it, I don't really mind. Raphael says, I can't wait for Amorim to start. Rude has settled the ship and made it a bit easier to take things forward. Shift 50% of the team. Some have been here for 6 years, says Keel. Lee, welcome to the Members Club. Thank you very much. Can I just say, in relation to the Members Club, I get this through the back system of YouTube every week. And Community Spotlight gives us a weekly highlight of your most engaged audience members. Georgie7, John Chris, Falcon F, Najib Khan and Cash are the top 5 this week. So well done to you. Georgie S. With over 100 comments, one of our members there. So big shout out to you, Seven. We're going to keep doing that because this is nothing if it's not a community. Garnacho is a second half player, failed to score against PAOK, Chelsea and somebody else. I think you're analysing Garnacho way too much, Kamal. I've never heard such bollocks in my life. You know these people who start going, Garnacho's a bench player. He's better off the bench. I've never heard such absolute shit. Do you think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer wanted to sit on the bench and be better off the bench? No player is happy to sit on the bench and be a last half an hour player. And in actual fact, I think it's a complete and utter myth. I think it's a myth. Solskjaer was a good bench player because that's where he was in the team. He wanted to start. He just wasn't good enough to start. If you don't think Garnacho's good enough to start for Man United, that's what you're saying. Don't try and polish it and say, he's a world-class player, but his best place is coming off the bench for the last half an hour. That means he's not good enough to start for Man United. Have the strength of your conviction. There's no such thing as, they're better off the bench. That just means they're a bench player. They're a substitute. Dark at 4 p.m. soon. Will they finish training then? Says Angel Bomb. Darren Fletcher survives another manager. Says A2. I never thought he wouldn't, if I'm being completely honest. Right. We've got some very interesting quotes I want to bring you around Marcus Rashford and Man United's ex-chief scout. But also, I want to just talk about this, what we've been talking about, read this Romano, a bit of information about Amorim saying if he was going to take the job, he wants high-intensity players. So give me some names. What players do you think currently at Manchester United are going to struggle under Ruben Amorim if he wants intensity players? Because I can go through that team very, very quickly and I will say, I'll just be honest. I'll be absolutely honest with you, okay? And there are players here I like. So I'm not talking about bad players. Some of these will be injury-prone players who are good players. Some of these will be players who are too old. Some of these players will just be, it doesn't suit their style of play to be high intensity. So forget Anana. I think he's absolutely fine. I think Dalot is fine. I think Mazraoui is fine. Now, people might go, Dalot's not good enough. But Dalot is a high-intensity player. Bloody hell. He plays nearly every week. He's back and forward like a yo-yo. So Dalot's fine, in my opinion. For high-intensity players, Dalot is fine. Mazraoui is fine. De Ligt is fine. Yoro is fine. Martinez is fine. I think Lindelof and Johnny Evans aren't. And I would suspect Maguire isn't either because he's starting to become injury-prone. I don't think intensity is just about pace, by the way, because people will go, Maguire's too slow to be highly intense. I don't think it necessarily is about pace sometimes, but I would say Maguire probably isn't going to be fine as well. So I'd say Lindelof, Johnny Evans and Maguire probably aren't. And also, age has a factor on Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire and Lindelof as well. Left back, I'd worry about Malacia and Shaw. We don't know what Malacia can do after 18 months out of the game. And Luke Shaw is sponsored by the NHS. So I can't see. I mean, it's like, you know, when opposites. So opposites, starter, dessert. Luke Shaw, intensity. They're just opposites. So I think Luke Shaw very much would be on the not going to be able to deal with it because he can't stay fit. Into the midfield, obviously I think Mainu is fine. I think Agate obviously is fine. I think Bruno is an intensity player. He'll be fine. I think Mason Mount is a question mark because based on the last 2 years, he's in trouble. And if the injury issues are there, he's in trouble. Eriksen, no chance. Obviously age and movement. So I think he would be in trouble. Casemiro's a difficult one because I think obviously Casemiro of 28 is a high intensity player. Casemiro at 32, again, it's about what he's got in the legs. Again, I think Casemiro is probably a little bit like Maguire. It's like, it's not that they're bad. It's just that their age and where they're at this age, maybe they aren't going to be high intensity players. Up front, Xerxes, we need to know more about, but I would hope he would be okay. Rasmus is a high-intensity player. We're talking about intensity. Ahmad, I think, will be absolutely fine. And that basically leaves Rashford and Garnacho, who, if I'm being completely fair, do I think Rashford and Garnacho are high-intensity players? I think you could say no, and I think you could say yes to both. They are both quick flair players. Do they both put intensity into their defensive work? I think Garnacho is going to be fine because he's 20 years of age, and I think he is absolutely primed to be developed. And I think Rashford's probably in the last chance saloon. But I again, with both of those players, I wouldn't put them in the same position as Eriksen, Luke Shaw, Harry Maguire, Victor Lindelof, Johnny Evans. I think there are other players that you would look at and go, they're really going to struggle to be high intense for the next 2 years. And also, remember, this is a 2 or 3 year project. Even if you think Casemiro can do it today, can he do it in 2 years' time? And that has to be factored in as well. You've got to look at the next 2 to 3 years. So even if you're thinking Johnny Evans can do it, is he going to be doing it at 39? So yeah, I think that they're probably the names that I would go with. I want to go through some of yours. Imad says Anthony. Just hold your thoughts on Rashford, because there's some comments we wanted to bring into the show about that from the ex-chief scout of Manchester United. Jackie Boy says Luke Shaw has a room he rents in A&E. Raz says bringing Alvaro Fernandez back would be brilliant signing for Amorim. He's probably seen a lot of him during his time in Portugal. 15 million apparently. Akil says don't think we are in for Nkunku, but if we are in for high intensity players, maybe this is to trigger some players and agents making a move. What about the GOAT? Anthony, says Jackie Boy. I mean, look, Anthony, for me, I wouldn't even want to make a comment because I think it's just dangerous. I think if you said he's definitely done, in 6 months he might be starting on the left wing back. So I think he is done. You know what? In relation to Anthony, we've seen so little of him over the last year. It's very difficult to say what he is. It would be a hell of a comeback. I mean, I don't want to get religious, but and I'm not going to. But there's not many comebacks that Anthony wouldn't be able to put in the shade if he came back and actually ended up being a really good player for Manchester United. Amorim is coming in at the perfect. Patrick Lynch, thanks for your super chat. He says Amorim is coming in at the perfect time for him personally. Fans will be patient, and the situation has been so bad that he can demand Deadwood removal. Finally, feels like we have forward momentum. Melissa says, "What was for dinner tonight?" Off track, very, very quickly, Melissa. An absolutely fantastic autumnal dinner. It was chicken cut up into bits with mushroom, shallots, garlic in a red wine jus. So very like a red wine gravy, really. Very rich, very, very nice. And then I had some broccoli. And then I had a butter bean mash, which was much better than mashed potato. It was absolutely lovely. Garnacho, we've done that one. Okay. I just wanted to have a quick look here. We need young Argentinian and Uruguayan players, says... who said that? I can't see. The chat's moving way too quick here. Look, I don't care if you don't like it, Brian. I like it. I'm not asking you to eat it. I was asked a question. Did I have pudding? Yes. I had Greek yogurt with some chocolate in it. It was really nice. Anyway, somebody just said, oh, just before I talk about these comments that have been made about Rashford, by the way, and of course, if you've got any players that I haven't mentioned or you disagree with players that I think will make it, obviously I've said the players I think will be fine. I've said the players that I think might be on the line. By all means, get those comments in. You know what? YouTube's getting on my bloody tits at the moment. It's always doing this. Anyway, I got a very good question. It's coming back now, don't worry. I got a very good message today, and I can't remember from who it was. I think it was like TR or someone like that, but I can't remember what their name is, so I apologise. They're probably watching. And they basically said, in relation to Ruud van Nistelrooy, just very quickly, it just reminded me there. In relation to Ruud van Nistelrooy, should we read anything into, and you will probably say no, should we read anything into the fact that Amorim had to make a decision about Ruud van Nistelrooy on day one? And what they basically said is, why was that even a decision for Amorim to make? Like, what about INEOS did they think Amorim might want to keep? The previous manager's guy? Why have they not just dealt with that and said, you're gone? We've got a new guy with his own team and you're gone. Why did they leave it to Amorim? It's interesting. Honestly, I don't think it's that deep. I think it actually makes Amorim look good. Maybe that's why it happened. Maybe INEOS knew Van Nistelrooy was going and just said, I think it would be good if on the first day you made the decision to show that you mean business. So I sort of get the point. Why did INEOS even leave it to Amorim? Surely they should have had an opinion that Ruud needed to go as part of a clear out. But look, we end up where we end up in the right position, so I don't think it matters really. And I actually think INEOS have done a good job so far. And that might surprise some people, but I think so far they've done a good job. The proof will be in the pudding, but I can't complain about a lot of the things they've done. But as with any partial ownership or ownership, you're only as good as your last decision. You know, you are. The trouble about being in charge of Man United is you can do well, make a bad decision, and everybody's against you again. But so far, so good. Switching from overpaid marquee signings with no structure to prioritising players with a system is fundamental to turning the club around. Full confidence in Amorim and the new suits. Well, you know what, Sean? You make a good point. I know Agate costs £60 million, but he isn't Paul Pogba. And I actually, I like Xerxes, but he isn't Jadon Sancho at £75 million. I quite like the fact that even though we've spent a lot of money this summer, there's not really a massive superstar there, is there? Lenny Yoro potentially could be, but he's 18. I like the fact that we are looking to buy players with personality and character and mentality and consistency. I'm not saying they're all going to succeed, but when you look at Yoro, De Ligt, Mazraoui, Agate, they're not being bought because they're superstars. They're being bought to come into the team and be consistent character players. Xerxes I haven't included in that because I just don't know what Xerxes will be yet. I'm encouraged, but I don't know what he will be. But superstar he's not. And I think what you're basically saying is that we, Sean, is that we need to stop buying those superstars and buying players that are actually coming here to be consistent and work hard and intense. Do you think Amorim reuniting with Agate will benefit the player or add more pressure, says Caitlin? Look, I think it will benefit Agate. I think he's done really well without Amorim over the last couple of weeks because Ruud has played him. And I don't for the life of me know what Ten Hag was doing with Agate. And as a defender of Ten Hag, but also a massive defender of Agate, that was a confusion for me. A real confusion. But Ruud put him in the team and he's gradually getting better. I think there'll be bad games. Look, we're playing Man City and Arsenal in the next month. I wouldn't be surprised if Agate had a stinker in one of those games because he's up against good midfielders. But he isn't going to be the finished article yet. And he's showing development and he's showing growth. So I'm happy to be on the journey with Agate. And again, patience is not just for Amorim, it's patience with new signings. Ruud should take the Roma job, says Nesty. Look, I hope Ruud can get a good job. Honestly, I hope he can. John says, I'm excited to see Ahmad under Amorim with young talent coming through like Kone. How desperate will he be to buy? The Deadwood's the biggest problem. Agree. I'm not worried about buying players because I think we can get players. I think we can get players for this system. I really, really do. But it's removing the big Deadwood, the big wages that worries me the most because we've never done it. So I think we're right to be sceptical. Any jobs you recommend with Fletcher? Job security. It's a zero connection. I don't really get the Darren Fletcher thing. I really don't think it's... It used to bother me a little bit when he was on the training ground. But since he's not on the training ground anymore, there's plenty of people at Man United that are not as high profile name as Darren Fletcher that you would go, why are they there? So I haven't got a problem with Darren Fletcher at Man United anymore. I really don't. I think... there's obviously a reason they keep him, and INEOS have not been backwards in being ruthless in removing people. Would Amorim have kept Scott McTominay? Would he have kept Wan-Bissaka? I think the McTominay thing is boring. He's doing well for Napoli. Hopefully that shows clubs that we've got good players you can buy. Don't think we're in for it. I've done that one. Okay, let's talk about these Rashford comments. I've only seen these. I'm pretty much actually reading them verbatim live with you because I've only glanced them. They're on the United Stand Twitter page. And basically, I saw Webby was on about it on the Webby O'Neill channel, actually. He was saying that he's worried about Rashford. And I think look, everybody moves at a different pace. Some of you aren't worried with Rashford. You're something else with Rashford. I've had these conversations with Rashford with you over, a lot longer than the last couple of weeks. And I think many other people have. But people take their time to sort of focus on a potential issue. And I think what we've seen this morning is another raft of United fans like Webby, like this scout, who are going, I'm worried about Rashford. Because people have their own process of thinking about things. To us, to many of us, it's like, well, it's not like it's something we don't know. But very interesting. Former chief scout, Manchester United, Mick Brown on Rashford. He's very much a Manchester boy. He's got Manchester United running through his veins, and that's okay up to a point. But his performances have been too up and down. There's no consistency, and it's that inconsistency which has cost him and cost United this season. I don't know what his problem is or why he is struggling. Well, honestly, I think, I agree. The Manchester boy thing, train left a long time ago. It's not actually that relevant. It only takes you so far. But why the inconsistency is there is surprising. I mean, I said I thought he'd come good last season. And I said at the end of last season, I thought he'd have a really good season this year. And there were signs at the start of the season that he might. And then we're in November again, and it's sort of back to being inconsistent again, isn't it? I mean, look, if you think about the Porto game, started off really well, wasn't tracking back, got subbed. You think about the game yesterday against Leicester, gets to start on the left over Garnacho, big opportunity, ends up getting subbed straight away at the end of the second half, at the start of the second half. So it's like, sometimes I think like when he was benched for the Palace game, a bit harsh, but rotation happens. But then when the opportunity's there, he doesn't seem to kick on. I mean, and that is a confusion. And I genuinely do not. It makes me laugh how apparently, well, the people say it about me, you hate Rashford. I mean, I don't get it. I mean, I know it's more of a Twitter thing. On here, people say completely the opposite, that I'm on the Rashford PR train. It's a weird world of people who probably don't listen to what I'm saying. There's nothing I'd like more than for him to get back to what he was before, because it's cheap. We've already paid the contract. We've already got the player. So if he starts scoring 20 goals, we're laughing. But I genuinely always thought that would happen. And I suppose I probably still do. I still have hope that new manager, new Rashford, we've seen that before. But I do watch him this season. And before I mention some other comments, if you want a totally fair assessment, because there won't be any words of shit, overrated, and Trashford or any of that nonsense. I've never liked those words. Certainly Trashford I haven't liked. When I look at him this season, I'm concerned about things I've said before. I think he's too predictable. And I think he's become so predictable that it's now confused him. I think defenders have figured out that he's either going to cut inside and shoot, or he's going to take you on down the byline. I think the absence of Luke Shaw hasn't helped, because Luke Shaw with the overlap allowed another level of unpredictability. It gave him three options. He could play Rashford in, he could take them on, or he could cut inside and shoot. And that just gives the defender a bit of uncertainty. And if you're a right back and you're doubling up on Rashford and Luke Shaw makes that run, you're sort of thinking, I've got to go with him. And as you go like that, Rashford cuts inside and shoots. So he has lost that. But you can't be Marcus Rashford or Garnacho or Son or Anthony Gordon and your whole success relies on Luke Shaw being fit, because you're done. You're done if that's the case. I think what he needs to do, and has always needed to do, is deliver some unpredictability to his game. But I think he's confused. I think he looks confused. I think his confidence, maybe not in his head, but in the way he plays the game, I think he doesn't really look like he knows what he's doing. And ultimately, he's definitely lost a yard of pace, which I find incredible at 27. I still don't believe he's lost it, But he does look like he's lost a yard of pace this year, which many of you have mentioned before. So at the moment, he just doesn't look good enough. It doesn't look like it's a bad patch. It looks like it's a consistently what he is at the moment. But I still do hope. Look, he's not having many shots on goal. And one thing about Rashford is, and we saw it in the Manchester derby last year, and we saw it against Spurs, in certain situations, he still will score goals. But we're not getting him into them situations. Mick Brown, former chief scout of Man United, also goes on to say, I'm told he's got to have an arm around him and he's got to feel valued, but I don't agree. Put that to Roy Keane and I know what the answer would be. He's got all the talent in the world, but never finishes a game. He's always taken off. I mean, this is very harsh. If a fan said this, it would be, you'd get called all sorts of stuff. This is an former Man United chief scout basically saying, why does he need an arm around him? And why is he never finishing a game? Why is he always being taken off? It's harsh stuff. It is harsh. I don't know whether it helps the player, to be honest, but it's harsh and there's more. I've got great belief in Marcus's ability, but all too often he doesn't show it. When the new manager comes in, he'll assess where he thinks he's at and then he'll make a decision. It'll be up to him to determine the level he's playing at and try to get the best out of him because it wasn't working under Ten Hag. If it's something that keeps going to happen, then chances are they decide he's got to go because you can't afford to carry players just because of who they are. He's a Manchester United boy, but if Amorim can't solve his problem, I think they'll listen to offers. I think you know what? If you are searching for a little bit of hope, we all read things and we all start thinking about other things. The Ten Hag thing caught my ear. I know Ruud van Nistelrooy is not Ten Hag, but he was Ten Hag's assistant. I just wonder if there's any hope that with Ten Hag and Ruud and Heck gone and a brand new setup, if they put their arm around him, do we suddenly get Rashford back again? I think it's the last chance, isn't it? I think that's where we are. But that could happen if Ruben Amorim comes in and puts his arm around him and says you're amazing and you're brilliant, and then maybe we'll get that Rashford back. I mean, look, it's the last sort of excuse, I suppose. I'm trying to figure out how we get him back, and I'm just thinking, was he just so unhappy under Ten Hag? Sancho's a mate. I don't know. But it's the last solace, really. It's the last crumb of hope, isn't it? That maybe with Ruud and Rennie Heck gone and Ten Hag's already gone, and he comes back to work on Monday, and Amorim gives him a hug and says, "You're my player. You're going to be playing every week," and suddenly we get him back. That's the only thing I can think that changes. But I mean, there'll be a lot of people in the chat saying he doesn't deserve that. Why does he deserve to go back in the team ahead of Garnacho or Ahmad, or in an Amorim system? We don't even play with a left winger. So what's he going to do? Take one of the central midfield positions away behind the striker, or is he going to take the striker role? Yeah, but I mean, Rochelle says stop protecting him. He's crap. It's called an opinion, mate. It's not protection. It's just an agenda you don't like. I just think that I've been very consistent about this. I still think a player at 27 who can score goals, who is on 300 grand a week with a massive contract, will not be thrown on the scrap heap straight away and shouldn't be. And I think every player will be given a clean slate. And I look at him over the last year and I think he's going to really struggle because the trajectory of Garnacho and Ahmad is higher and they're younger. And he is 27 and is not going to get any better. He's going to actually drop off, isn't he, over the next few years? And God help him if he's Rooney, Michael Owen or any other player that's been overplayed as an English player, because actually 27's the new 32. You fall off a cliff very, very quickly in your late 20s. But then that's all very negative predictions. As a positive prediction, what if Amorim sparks something in him? And that's all I'm saying. I mean, look, if you want me to say what I think is going to happen, I'd say there's a 75% chance it's not going to work out, and there's a 25% chance that we get him back. That's not protecting anybody. That's just saying I don't think it's impossible. But it's not impossible that Harry Maguire is a starting centre-back in a back three come the new year. It's not impossible that Luke Shaw is our left wing-back playing for 6 months. That isn't possible. I've used a bad example, but we don't know who the players are going to be, and I think this is why patience is so important, because if you take your favourites into the Amorim era, you're going to turn on Amorim, and I don't want any fan to do that. So I'm going into this completely open-minded. Yes, there are players that I like. You know, I want Rasmus, Garnacho, Ahmad, Mainu, Agate, Bruno. There are certain players that I want to be part of this journey. And there's a lot more than that. You know, I'm actually quite impressed with Onana at the moment. I like De Ligt, I like Martinez, I like Mazraoui, I like Dalot. But I don't dislike the players I haven't mentioned, by the way, because my point is, I know I can't have favourites because we've got to get behind Amorim. And if Amorim says, I don't think Rasmus is actually good enough, I'm going to put Rashford up front, I'm going to buy a striker in the summer, I'm not going to go, right, what's he doing? He's an idiot. I'm going to get behind it because that's what we need to do with this manager. And I can't guarantee it because maybe it will be very predictable. Maybe it's the players we think that will do well, and maybe it's the players that we think will do bad that will do bad. But I would not be surprised if there's 2 or 3 players that you thought no chance, and they end up being important, and they maybe improve. And then I wouldn't be surprised if there's 2 or 3 players that you thought will definitely be part of it that aren't. I mean, look at the midfield pivot for a start. You think it's going to be Agate and Mainu, might not be. Where does Mainu fit in if he goes Agate and Casemiro? And then people will be going, I just don't want that to happen. I don't want him to go Agate and Casemiro, and then suddenly the British press are going, why is Mainu not playing? And then some United fans are going, free Mainu. I don't want to see any of that shit. The free Ahmad stuff was just about tolerable because it was a time when Ten Hag was in a lot of trouble and Ahmad did deserve to play. But I don't want to see fucking free Mainu in the live chat in December, or free Agate, or free Garnacho, or free Ahmad, or anybody else, because that was unique to a manager that was in trouble that had been here for over 2 years. This manager must be allowed to do what he wants to do. We can't pick the fucking team. We love picking the team, but with a new manager, we can't be picking the team. We've got to trust in the manager. And I don't want to see people picking the team or saying this player should play, this player should play. We're not coaches, and we certainly don't know how to coach a 3-4-3. So look, that's easier said than done, but I hope a lot of people are patient. Caitlin says Rashford needs an arm round him. We need to talk about these big contracts. It's crazy, says Shan. Look, I love the 8 o'clock shows during the international break. They always end up being like this because we can have deeper conversations. So I wouldn't mind doing a show. I certainly want to do a show around a few things that I want to get interactive on, but I wouldn't mind looking at contracts, actually. I think that's quite a good thing. I think Rashi and Shaw will leave in the summer. Don't forget to like the video. It's a great show again, says Ryan. Thank you very much, Ryan. Andy Wilson says it's over. Let Rashford move on and find love. We will go for Martin Satriano as striker signing, says Nick James, and so he can play one position, one style, and with one player. No hate towards him, but I'm just bored, says Keel. Look, let's move on from Rashford. But what I will say is, if he's going to work at Man United, he has to adapt because we don't play. His position doesn't exist. His position doesn't exist anymore. He either plays up front in 2 of the positions behind the striker, or he works his arse off and works as a left wing midfielder. So his position doesn't exist. So he has to change. And that might be a good thing because he's got to change from being an inconsistently underperforming player into the player that we want him to be. So not only has he got to change, he's got to change in relation to positionally anyway. Alex Riley says, genuine question, do you think Rashford has actually ever been great with Luke Shaw? It might be interesting. I think they did work well together. Obviously, absence makes the heart go fonder. We might be overhyping it a little bit, but they did work well together because Luke Shaw made every left winger's job easier because he had an abundance of energy to overlap and a lovely cross on him as well. But look, whether it was as good as some people make it out, probably not. Rashford for me makes me think of Belfast, says Constantine. Simple, says Taras. Like any other player, if Rashford can adapt, then great. If not, he's got to go. Club over players, great job as always. And I think that's the greatest point, and I want to move on from Rashford, is that Rashford actually represents everybody else as well. Collateral is absolutely fine. We actually need to move on from shock, horror. We might get rid of any player. They all need to go if they're not good enough, and they all need to be scrutinised. Swami says, I love you, but I disagree. If that fire isn't lit from within, no number of new managers will get Rashford to perform. Like you said, self-critic. I don't know what you disagree with about, mate, because I don't disagree with you. I think what makes you get up at 6:30 in the morning? What makes you get up at 8 o'clock in the morning? What makes you go to work? What makes you, go and put the bins out? What makes you go down the shops? It's self-motivation. And you know what? It's meant to be hard, because if it wasn't hard, we'd all be doing it. That's why Mo Salah is the most consistent winger in the Premier League. And that's why, for me, he's massively underrated. And I hate to say it about a Liverpool player, but it's not, Mo Salah's not just there on pure talent. Talent takes you so far, and unfortunately, you can't rely on other people to make you great. You can't rely on an arm around your shoulder, because life's not fair. If you can find somebody that does everything for you and encourages you and makes you good, then you're very, very lucky, because we all know that that's not always there. Sometimes you've got to fight for yourself, and you've got to critique yourself. And life isn't fair. And I think look, bigger picture. This has got nothing to do with Rashford. It's to do with a lot of footballers. They start playing when they're 5, 6, 7, 8. They go into academies. Then they're a teenager in an academy. Then they're in a big club academy. Then they're in the youth team. Then they're knocking on their first team door. Then they're in the first team. And from the age of about 8 till being a grown adult in a professional football team, they've had zero interaction with the real world. Zero. It's all protection, hype, competitiveness. And some of them are just the same as your group of friends or your classmates or your workmates. There are different personalities that deal with different things. And that's what footballers are like. They're not all the same. And some of them can't self-reflect. Some of them do blame shift. Some of them are inconsistent because their mentality is not the same as the guy next to them or the guy in another team. And that's just life. And that, for me, is why we need to stop thinking about individual players, because what we actually need to think about is what the system is and what the requirements are. And that's why recruitment and that's why we go back to the start about what Amorim is saying is what we're saying. Bring me the intensity players. That is what I need. And what he means by that is, I don't want to be talking about player FC. I don't want to be talking about how do we get the best out of this player? How do we get the best out of that player? Bring me the players. I know in life, some people are lazy, some people work hard, some people are weak, some people are strong, some people get injured, some people are fit all the time. Bring me the profile of player that doesn't get injured, is strong, is consistent, is intense, and is talented. Because there's loads of them out there. Just get me them. Get me 25 of them and I'll win you the league. And that is what we're saying here. But what we've been doing for the last 10 years is trying to find excuses and ways to make players that aren't those things. And they'll do it for a month and then they'll go back to what they really are, because leopards don't change their spots. And that's why we're in that system. Angel, I was at Old Trafford 2 weeks ago. Sorry, just a twat in the chat. Sinking in that Almarin is here. Always glazes out, says Kieran. Keel Robinson says, you said my contract show was shit. I'm not doing a show about contracts. I'm saying in the international break on an 8 o'clock show, about half an hour in, I think it would be interesting to talk about how many people's contracts are. You wanted to do a show just about contracts. Oh, whose contract's running out show with Keel? No, we're not doing that. It'd be rubbish. I worry for the season because I struggle to match our players to the Amorim system, says Skiz. Patience, mate. Have some patience. Rashford would benefit from lone striker role, says Nick. Disagree. Doesn't have the physicality or the hold-up play. It'd be good as a striker in a team where you break away and there's loads of space. Everton, somewhere like that. But in a team that wants to link up, I think he'd be better behind the striker. But I'm not writing him off. I'm not writing anybody off. So this is part of the excitement, isn't it? I'm not writing Maguire off. I'm not writing Casemiro off. I'm not writing Ericsson off. I'm not writing Lindelof off. I'm not writing Shaw off. Well, I am. I'm not writing Mount off. I think you have to write Luke Shaw off. I know we joke, but I'm writing him off on injuries. It doesn't matter how good he is. I'm writing him off on that. I think the only ones that you can really write off are if they're over 33 in the next 3 years, or they've got a terrible injury record. Anyone else will be given a chance. Whether they should do or not, they will. Andy Cheatham says, I think we need to stop putting arms around people. The badge should be an arm enough. 100%, Andy. I like Rashford and nothing will bring me more joy than for him regaining his form, but definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. New environment can help him too, says Jose. Look, bottom line, if he gets back to good, we're laughing. And that's the same with anybody, because it's more problematic to replace and buy a player than it is to get the best out of what you've got. But consistency will be what it's all about. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching tonight. 20,000 watching. I hope you're going to tune in every 8 o'clock show over the international break, because they're all going to be as good as this. And I'm tired of saying that the 8 o'clock show during the international break, they're always bangers, because we just go into lots of different areas that we don't normally get time to. Hassor, welcome to the Members Club. You're an absolute legend. Appreciate that. Welcome to the members, new members. Fairway 5 says, it was ruthless but needed about getting rid of Rude. It's exactly the same with Rashford in my view. There we go. I think what I'm not comfortable is it's Rashford. I don't think Rashford is the problem. And I also think Rashford represents virtually every player that might need to go or needs to change things around. I think there's a collection of players that we all agree could do really well based on talent and age. And then there's a collection of players that look, why is Bruno not being mentioned? Because he's Portuguese and the captain and he had a good game yesterday. There's a few players in that situation that need to work. Rub's here, bit late, but we're off to go. Thank you, Tracy. One of our members says, great show as always. Well, get your comments in if you didn't watch live. Get involved at 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Obviously, we've got the news show back at 10 o'clock tomorrow. And I've got a good show at 2 o'clock that I probably will do live. I was going to pre-record it, but I'll probably do it at 2 o'clock. But of course, on Amorim, we are still waiting on interviews that could come in as well for us to react. Big, busy day for United. And I think we will get a few more news drops this week as well. Keep an eye. Which game are you excited for most with the 3-4-3? Every single one of them, Nick. It doesn't matter if it's Bodo Glimt, Ipswich, Everton, Arsenal. I think they're all going to be very interesting because we're going to get used to a system we haven't seen before. I've got something in my throat. It just keeps popping back up. Probably my tongue. Speak to you all later. Take care. Thanks for watching. Legends. Stay safe.